Good afternoon, and please be seated, everyone. Goodness, we are delighted to welcome so many distinguished guests to this very special ceremony in the courtroom this afternoon, starting with the Chief's family, her husband Alan, son Mark, his wife Lu Ming, who are with us from Utah, and grandson Isaiah, her son Jonathan from Colorado. I understand that Kathy is not here, but is well represented by grandchildren Gabrielle and Raffaello. There are many justices and judges, current and retired, who are here as well. In addition to the members of the court, we have Chief Zazali, Justices Garibaldi, Handler, Long, Stein, Vernero, Wallace. If anyone is checking, I covered everyone alphabetically. The Honorable Ann Thompson, our dear friend, Judge of the United States District Court, members of the Appellate Division, current and retired assignment judges, judges of the trial bench, Attorney General Del Tufo, Law School Deans John Farmer and Ray Solomon, Dee Miller, Head of Legal Services, Clerks of the Court, Stephen Townsend and Mark Neary, members of the Judiciary family at the AOC, now led by Judge Grant, the acting director. We have former directors Williams, and I know that Judge Karchman is on his way. If he's not yet here, he is scheduled to be here. And so many dedicated staff members who are responsible for much of what the judiciary accomplishes on a regular basis. And of course, there are many other family and friends of the chief who are here today. Forgive me if I've inadvertently left anyone out. With the more than 100 people that are here today, each deserving of recognition, I'll apologize to all of you right up front. Now, there are a number of things that one could discuss when unveiling a portrait for someone who has led the judiciary with distinction for a decade. There are, of course, the personal accomplishments of the honoree over a lifetime, not just the remarkable chapter during which you served as Chief Justice of the Court. There is the body of legal work that the chief authored during her tenure on the court. I think back to that remarkable Weintraub lecture that Justice Long offered a few years ago, and I'm optimistic and hopeful that we'll hear a little bit of that during your remarks in a few moments. So instead, let me share some observations that relate directly to the subject matter of why we're here today, the subject of portraits and the New Jersey Supreme Court. Now, perhaps Chief Poritz can relate to this, but I remember well the first time that I took my seat. I see Justice Coleman. One apology right there. I remember well the first time that I took my seat at the conference table with all thoughts of different things swirling around my head. I looked around and saw my colleagues around the table. Then I looked up and I saw these large, probing eyes of every Chief Justice of the modern era since 1948, located in portraits throughout the room, and all of them were focused directly on the seat at the head of the conference table. I don't know if you've had that feeling as well. Now, some of you may doubt it. I accept that. So my challenge is that when you next find yourself in the conference room, situate yourself right near the seat of the Chief Justice, look up, and you will see that they are all focused directly on you. Now, it would be easy to allow one's imagination to get carried away and start to wonder what it is that they might be thinking as they listen to the current justices debate and wrestle with issues of today's courtroom proceedings. But I have plenty to do without worrying. I'll leave that to Shirley McLean and others to try to figure out. And instead, I want to think back to one more series of events, and that's a series of meetings and conversations that I had with Chief Poritz shortly before taking the oath. And she could not have been more gracious, thoughtful, more generous, or warm in trying to help prepare me for the court, and it was quite obvious that she had done so with a good number of individuals beforehand. Her counsel, her insightful advice was invaluable then, and I'm fortunate that it has continued on many, many occasions on a regular basis since then. So this subject of portraits and justices, Chief Justices on the Supreme Court, as far as I'm concerned, has a very happy ending. Because to know that among the group of faces we will see looking down on the conference table, beginning next week with our conference on Tuesday, among the portraits of giants, starting with each conference that goes forward, will be a portrait of another giant. And in this case, a dear friend whose smiling, warm gaze looking over all of us will be an inspiration for justices for for the generations to come. So, Chief Poritz, I am so pleased that we're able to celebrate this special day with you, with your family, and on behalf of the entire court, we wish you congratulations. Now, there are a number of speakers that we're fortunate to be able to hear from this afternoon who need little introduction because of how much a fabric of the life of our court they have been. We will start with the first litigant seated at counsel's table over there, the newest and busiest private practitioner in the state of New Jersey, the Honorable Justice Long.
May it please the court.
Are you reserving any time, ma'am?
No. I'm delighted to be here today to speak at the portrait presentation ceremony in honor of my old friend, Deborah Tobias Poritz. Let me begin at the beginning. On July 10th, 1996, as a result of Chief Justice Robert Walentz's worsening illness and resignation, Deborah Poritz, upon nomination by Governor Christine Todd Whitman, was sworn in as Chief Justice. She was an entirely legitimate choice, a brilliant student, a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Brooklyn College, a law degree from the University of Pennsylvania, and an unparalleled employment record ranging from English professor to governor's counsel, from partner in a prestigious Princeton law firm to attorney general. In many of those roles, she broke new ground for her gender and performed in each with distinction. The court that she would head was, at the time, known throughout the nation as a protector of individual rights and basked in its reputation for judicial progressivism. Thus, it did not appear that Chief Justice Poritz was to be called upon to remedy a broken judicial system or to revitalize a lackluster decision-making process. From the perspective of any ascendant to power, inheriting a diamond is surely better than inheriting a piece of coal. However, it would be fair to say that Deborah Poritz joined the Walentz court and not vice versa. She entered what has been called the lion's den because at least one legal scholar observed the lions of the New Jersey activist court were departing. On that court were associate justices who had worked closely together for 10 years or more. Like old married people, Justices Handler, Pollock, O'Hearn, Garibaldi, Stein, and Coleman could end each other's sentences. In a New York Times article following Chief Justice Walentz's death, one justice described the Walentz court as going through their mental gymnastics together with the ease of a great basketball team that can pass a ball among players without looking. Good for them, not so good for somebody who never played basketball, and she never played basketball. Although she has never said so, I imagine that no matter how helpful and wonderful her colleagues were, those days were challenging. Indeed, even the most confident individual would be awestruck taking over the leadership of such an institution. And it was not just the internalized struggle that we all experience when thrust into new and unfamiliar territory. Frankly, no legal commentator suggested the possibility that the Poritz court might aspire to what its forebears had achieved, or even stay the progressive course that had been established. If those hopes indeed had life within the observer's breasts, they remained unexpressed. What was expressed was the opposite. Because she was deemed to be more conservative than her predecessor, the Chief Justice would lead the court away from the innovative legal thinking that had defined the Walentz years. Although time constraints do not permit a full survey of the Poritz court's decision, one thing is clear: they were wrong. The progressive approach of the Walentz years was not diminished under Chief Justice Poritz, but enhanced. Indeed, invoking the New Jersey Constitution and diverging from federal constitutional doctrine where necessary to assure the rights of our fellow citizens, the Poritz Court reaffirmed that municipalities cannot set aside dilapidated housing in urban ghettos for the poor and decent housing elsewhere for everyone else. It ruled that another generation of school children should not have to pay the price of an unequal education, held that malls are the new main streets on which free speech rights may be exercised, and determined that law enforcement must have a reasonable suspicion to justify requesting a driver stopped on a highway to consent to a search. In addition, in maintaining its attitude of progressivism, the Poritz Court identified the inherent flaws in cross-racial identification, broadly interpreted the public's right of access to the work of public bodies, revived the public trust doctrine to provide our fellow citizens access to the ocean, and interpreted voting laws liberally in favor of voters' rights. The Poritz Court also consistently evidenced its willingness to cope with the problems of a new age and to devise new solutions for them. It recognized a tort based on preconception negligence. It limned a remedy for divorced couples who could not agree over the disposition of frozen pre-embryos. It abrogated the learned intermediary defense to reflect the present-day reality that drug companies engage in direct advertising to consumers and should be held responsible for what they say, and declared the rights of homosexual couples vis-a-vis their child conceived in vitro. Last, but certainly not least, is the one case that no review of the Poritz Court could overlook. In an opinion written by the Chief Justice, known worldwide, Dale versus the Boy Scouts, the court broadly interpreted the New Jersey law against discrimination and ruled that the Boy Scouts, as a place of public accommodation, must permit an openly gay person to serve as an adult leader. Now, it is no secret that the case was ultimately reversed in a 5-4 decision by the United States Supreme Court. And for some, that is the end of the story. Yet there was a coda that answered the projections of the pundits regarding the Poritz Court. It came in the dissent filed on behalf of Justices Stevens and Souter, who, relying on Justice Brandeis's defense of federalism, concluded that in rejecting the Poritz Court's interpretation of the New Jersey law against discrimination, the Supreme Court of the United States, quote, did not accord this courageous state, the respect that is its due. Obviously, that is just a smattering of the cases decided by the Poritz Court. Some are popular, some are not. But what can be derived from them is this: a devotion to principle, a respect for the landmarks of the past, a willingness to stay the course despite criticism and to stand alone on an issue if necessary, an ability to change where change is necessary, and above all, a leitmotif of faithfulness to ensuring that the individual rights of our citizens are safeguarded. In so doing, the Poritz Court remained independent, honored its precedent, modulated that precedent to fill in the gap between words and reality, interpreted statutes sensibly, respected our tripartite form of government, held fast to the New Jersey Constitution, limned remedies to address present-day realities, and abided by the notion that the final cause of law is the welfare of society. But that is only part of the story. Each Chief Justice brings his or her own managerial style to the court. One commentator noted that Chief Justice Vanderbilt was a team player, but only if he could be captain. Nothing could be further from the Poritz style, which was reflective of her notion that jurisprudentially she was only one of 7. Although firm in her opinions, fully prepared, and perfectly capable of defending her position on any issue, she operated totally in a consensus mode, always seeking common ground both on rationale and outcome. Her method on difficult and contentious issues, which could take hours or days to resolve, was particularly effective. As the discussion proceeded, she continually reframed the issue, polishing off the sharp edges, seeking the creative moment of clarity and consensus. Her aim was for all of us to reach what she called the eureka moment. To reach that level, the Chief's reframing methodology, which required time, steadfastness, nimbleness of mind, and generosity of spirit, went a long way in achieving that outcome. She also understood the difficult nature of attempting to reconcile the views of 7 justices with different backgrounds and frames of reference, not just on substantive issues, but on the very words that ultimately appear on the pages we write. That is not to suggest that we were not collegial. We were. It is in the nature of what we do. It requires not only reconciling diametrically opposite opinions regarding substance, but also the very way in which the opinion is expressed. Some justices believe that when they write an opinion, a lawyer reading it at his desk the next day should have no doubt about exactly what he needs to do. Others believe it is the duty of the court to leave plenty of room for play in the joints of its opinions for future legal development. In the difficult conciliatory task of striking a balance between them, Chief Justice Poritz was a master. She was also a gifted editor, with the skills she developed as an English professor. The Chief Justice Poritz pored over every opinion with a proverbial red pen and a sharp eye, and her suggestions always made them better. To be sure, she redlined the turns of phrase that each of us holds most dear, the Latinisms, the double entendres, the cross of gold speeches, the poetry, the dramatic quotations, and we were sad for that, but in the end we agreed that the opinions were improved. Despite her overwhelming administrative obligations, the Chief Justice carried her own opinion load. Like her predecessors, she assigned herself the most difficult cases, those with the potential to expose the institution to criticism in order to deflect that criticism to herself. She rarely dissented. The Chief Justice was always open-minded, a great listener, and willing to rethink a position and acknowledge that she had made an error when logic directed that result. She was and is funny, kind, temperate, agreeable, compassionate, and a perfect colleague. She was also what her predecessors were. What Chief Justice Hughes declared a Chief Justice should be, one who will set a tone of progress, restless for the doing of right, and untiring in the elusive search for justice. She was indefatigable in her belief, in Poet Laureate Seamus Heaney's words, that a further shore is reachable from here. And like our predecessors, the members of the court under her leadership were much more than mere professional associates, and that in great measure was due to her. And today, I know the court remains as it has always been, scholarly, collegial, respectful, familial, loyal, cognizant always that it has been our honor to serve in what Lord Bacon described as this hallowed place. Those of us who sat with her and those who have come after will forever be appreciative of the collegial leadership of Chief Justice Deborah Poritz. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Sloan, for those beautiful remarks. We'll hear next from Judge Williams, the retired director of the Administrative Office of the Courts who served with the Chief.
May it please the Court. I'm honored to have this opportunity to share some thoughts about Chief Justice Poritz. In New Jersey, the Chief Justice has two important responsibilities under our Constitution. The first is to serve as the state's chief jurist, presiding over the proceedings and deliberations of our Supreme Court, and Justice Long has spoken eloquently about that responsibility. The second is to serve as the judiciary's chief executive, providing leadership for the judicial branch of government. My remarks will focus on Chief Justice Poritz's leadership in that role and its historic significance for our judiciary. I first met Chief Justice Poritz about 16 years ago when, immediately after her confirmation by the State Senate, she attended a meeting of the judiciary's 15 assignment judges. She was the only woman in the room. That would change. If there was a consistency in the composition of the assignment judges at that time, that same consistency did not exist when it came to the administration of justice throughout the state. Despite the best efforts of judicial leaders over the years, the delivery of justice varied throughout the state on a vicinage by vicinage or sometimes county by county basis. You could mediate a family dispute in one county but be required to try a similar dispute in another. You could enter a drug or alcohol rehab program in one county but go to jail for the same offense in the next. You could resolve a civil dispute in a timely fashion in one county but take years for resolution in another. Some counties had abundant staff and resources, while others were understaffed and poorly equipped. It was not unfair to say that the quality of justice sometimes depended on the wealth of the county where you found yourself. Because of Chief Justice Poritz's leadership, those circumstances would also change. The catalyst for this change was the constitutional amendment providing for state funding of the judiciary. Chief Justice Poritz had the vision to see this amendment as a unique opportunity to implement fundamental changes that would enhance the quality of justice on an equal basis for all citizens of our state, as an opportunity to achieve the dream of full judicial unification envisioned by the reformers who drafted our 1947 Constitution. She undertook this effort working collaboratively with assignment judges, presiding judges, and judiciary administrators throughout the state. She challenged them to reject parochialism and to think on a statewide and systemic basis. She opened opportunities for participation and for leadership on a broader and more diverse basis to more fully use the talents residing in our judiciary. As a result of this effort, judicial resources were allocated for the first time on an equitable basis throughout the state. No longer did the wealth of a county determine the adequacy of staffing in that county or the resources and equipment available to judges and staff. But Chief Justice Poritz's vision of unification encompassed more than mere reallocation of funding. Equal justice required the same quality and types of services be accessible to our citizens in every county. It meant that no attorney should walk into a courthouse anywhere in this state and feel like a stranger to the practices and procedures in that county. It meant there should be no hometown advantage to litigant or lawyer. As a result, the judiciary engaged in a collaborative effort to achieve those goals. That effort became known as best practices. Presiding judges were asked to determine what were the best available practices capable of implementation on a statewide basis, and then under the leadership of Chief Justice Poritz, those practices were implemented. Although somewhat controversial at the time, best practice initiatives proved their worth. Fair and consistent practices were established statewide and individual county anomalies were eliminated. Innovative local programs of merit were identified and then implemented on a statewide basis. And delay in resolving cases was reduced by historic proportions. What occurred in the process of unifying the judiciary was a culture change in this judiciary, a change to a judiciary that thought and acted on a statewide basis, that was driven by a concern for equal justice throughout the state. These things were accomplished because of the remarkable leadership of Chief Justice Poritz. She had the vision to understand the dreams of the reformers of 1947, the personality to work collaboratively with people, providing opportunities and drawing on their talents and dedication, the backbone to stand firm for what she believed was worthwhile and just, and the heart to care deeply about equal opportunity and equality of justice for all people of our state. As I close, I'd like to share a short personal story which for me illustrates why Deborah Poritz is regarded so affectionately by those who know her and have worked with her. As you know, the Administrative Director's office is located one floor below this floor, just below the Chief's chambers. When I served in that position, I would see Chief Justice Poritz about administrative matters almost every day. One day, as I walked into her chambers unannounced, she was at her desk, deep in thought, with books and papers piled all around her. She looked up and saw me, and I, realizing that I had interrupted her, said, "I'll come back." She insisted that not be the case. So I sat down, we exchanged pleasantries, discussed the matter that brought me there. And when we were done, I rose and started to leave, and as I was crossing the room, something stopped me. And I turned and I looked at her and I said, "You know, you're pretty remarkable. With as much as you have to do, I don't think that I could have been so intensely involved in something and interrupted it to accommodate a request like I just brought here. How do you do it?" She looked up at me from behind the pile of books and said simply, "I'm a mother." That is the Deborah Poritz that we have come to know and to respect, and for whom we have so much affection. It is a privilege to be able to honor her today.
Thank you, Judge Williams. We'll hear next from our friend and longstanding clerk of the court, Stephen Townsend.
Okay, here's where the redundancies start. Actually, good afternoon, honored guests, Chief Justice Radner, justices, and judge, and may it please the court. It's an honor to be speaking at such a special ceremony, one that has occurred only 5 other times since the Supreme Court was created in 1948. The presentation of Chief Justice Deborah Poritz's portrait brings at least 2 events into focus: a sense of completion of a journey that began on July 10th, 1996, and an opportunity to reflect on the Chief Justice's tenure on the court. In an article in a University of Pennsylvania Law School publication, Chief Justice Poritz expressed her hope that people would say that the court on which she served continued to be viewed in the tradition of excellence of its predecessor, and that, quote, we maintained, all of us together, the high quality of our opinions, the scholarship, the thoughtfulness, the attention to the law, and the issues, end quote. The Chief Justice worked tirelessly to make that aspiration a reality. As noted by a prior speaker, her background in English came as a very handy item when it came to opinions. Her editorial suggestions were precise and to the point. Her edits were, generally speaking, well received, the authors recognizing the benefits derived from the Chief Justice's efforts. On the administrative front, the Chief Justice exercised her broad constitutional authority as the chief officer of the judiciary. Starting with the implementation of state funding for the entire statewide court system, life, administratively speaking, became exponentially more complex. Chief Justice Poritz never avoided dealing with difficult administrative issues, including difficult people. She didn't enjoy that last bit, but she never hesitated to act when the situation called for her to do so. It certainly helped that she showed a deft hand in making critical administrative appointments. None better than Judges Dick Williams and Phil Karchman as acting administrative directors of the AOC. Although the judiciary as a whole consisted of more than 900 employees, Chief Justice Poritz had a very small personal staff. After longtime aide Fran Goki retired, the Chief Justice went forward with her 2 remaining staffers, Secretary Karen Cardone and her incomparable special assistant, Donna Anapete. That was it, 2 people. Well, actually there were a few more, 42, counting law clerks over 10 years. The Chief Justice loved them all. Well, darn near all of them. And as she said on more than one occasion, she sought to hire law clerks who would provide her with a variety of viewpoints on the law, constitutional and otherwise. This resulted in discussions that could be both energetic and illuminating. As for me, I simply felt that Chief Justice Poritz was a great boss. One of the more felicitous aspects of my relationship with her arose out of the fact that when getting off the judge's elevator in the morning, she often poked her head into my office to say hello and to conduct the first on-the-fly one-on-one meeting of the day. At other times during the workday, a "can you come over" phone call followed by my 2-minute walk led to a face-to-face discussion of the issue or issues at hand. I thoroughly enjoyed such sessions, particularly those that involved me being offered the opportunity to offer an opinion in lieu of a more structured response. Although having the AOC and the clerk's office in the same building with her provided certain benefits in the light of the Chief Justice's managerial style, her location in the Justice Complex presented her daily with a critical bonus: access to invaluable judicial resources. For the first 3+ years of her time on the court, the primary resource was the court's Senior Associate Justice, Alan Handler. Time and again, Justice Handler was able to provide the Chief Justice with what Justice Clifford always called wise counsel and advice. The only upside to Justice Handler's retirement in 1999 was that he was replaced by Justice Long. In the light of Justice Long's remarks today, it is safe to conclude that the Chief Justice and Justice Long bonded quickly and solidly, a bond that was immensely helpful to both and remains as strong today as ever. Chief Justice Poritz's last day on the Supreme Court was October 25th, 2006. Since leaving the court, she has, true to form, stayed incredibly busy, teaching, practicing law, and serving on a host of boards and committees. The work ethic that served her so well on the Supreme Court guides her daily activities and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. And while that activity proceeds apace, the latest addition to the Supreme Court conference room's portraits will soon be looking down gracefully from its place on the west wall, just to the right of Robert Willans. Wait for it. Okay.
We get it.
In silent encouragement and support for those who serve on the Supreme Court now and in the future, as they seek to act wisely and well, maintaining the court's tradition of excellence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. We were to hear next from Judge Karchman, the former director of the AOC and esteemed member of the Appellate Division. I understand that the travel plans that he had for today did not cooperate, and he got stuck in transit, and Judge Sabatino was pinch hitting.
The court entertain an oral substitution of attorney.
Gladly.
I'm going to read this in the third person. Chief Justice Rabner, Chief Justice Poritz, Chief Justice Azali, Justices of the Supreme Court, both present and past. Judge Karchman is proud to participate in this wonderful ceremony today where we honor our sixth Chief Justice of New Jersey, Deborah Poritz. While their paths crossed many times before her appointment as Chief Justice, after her assuming office, Judge Karchman had the pleasure of serving with the Chief, first as an assignment judge, and then as an appellate judge, and then during the last 2 years of her tenure as her third and the seventh administrative director of the courts. He focuses his remarks on those 2 remarkable years. What Judge Karchman learned from this extraordinary opportunity was that the office of Chief Justice in this state is unlike any other position in state government and may, in fact, be unique to the country as a whole. The Chief Justice is first and foremost a judge, albeit the first among equals on the Supreme Court, and then the first among the 700 or so judges who toil in the vineyards of the appellate division, trial courts, and our municipal courts. Our Chief Justice is required to balance 2 responsibilities, serving first as a justice leading a court nationally recognized for its independent thinkers, while at the same time administering an independent branch of government consisting of 9,000 employees and a budget exceeding $1.5 billion. This latter task alone mandates the skill set of any Fortune 500 CEO or the ringmaster at a 3-ring circus. What marked Chief Justice Poritz' style and mode of operations was her ability to gather and absorb information on any issue. She was then, and remains, the paradigm of the quick study. And then, after thoughtful analysis and consideration, she would act decisively, always keeping in the forefront of any decision the best interests of the court, the judiciary, and the citizens of this state. Chief Justice Poritz understood the rich traditions and the commitment to excellence that has so marked our modern judiciary and continues to make our Supreme Court and the entire judiciary the model of state judiciaries throughout the country. Judge Karchman leaves to others the task of assessing the Chief's jurisprudence, knowing full well that her thoughtful decisions will endure for years to come and, in so many instances, reflect a prescience that will in time benefit the generations that follow. He concentrates today on his brief 2-year period as administrative director. Judge Williams has already eloquently described the significant initiative undertaken by the Chief to ensure that the New Jersey judiciary would guarantee equal justice to all litigants, wherever situate in New Jersey. Common wisdom would suggest that one would wind down during one's last years in office. To put it in the vernacular, no way. The last 2 years of the Chief's tenure were dynamic, energized, and filled with a commitment to do more, not the least of which was to provide methods of implementing the core principles of equal justice. Although sometimes personally challenged by the advent of technology, the Chief advanced initiatives that reflected an understanding that equal justice would only be accomplished if access to the courts was ensured. The implementation of that ideal took many forms, but the theme of access dominated. Taking advantage of our advances in technology, the Internet became the prime vehicle for moving forward. In January 2005, New Jersey joined a handful of states that streamed Supreme Court arguments to all takers throughout the state, the nation, and the world. For many significant cases, thousands of onlookers occupied electronic seats and observed oral arguments as citizens witnessed not rock stars, but a well-prepared, hot court in action, engaged in an active dialogue with lawyers. What observers witnessed was thoughtful inquiries and analysis addressing issues and controversies in a way that demystified and enhanced our court system. The Chief rejected any notion or fear of showmanship or playing to the camera. Her confidence was well rewarded. In that same year, the New Jersey judiciary again led the nation in establishing a statewide ombudsman program, providing information to the public about court operations, processes, procedures, and services, and rendering procedural assistance related to the various programs in the trial courts. Today, ombudsmen in every vicinage assist self-represented litigants, receive and refer complaints from the general public, develop outreach programs, and direct persons to other agencies or services as appropriate. As the Chief's designed, the web became and continues as the go-to place for litigants and lawyers seeking forms, instructions, decisions of the Supreme Court Appellate Division, the trial courts, ethics committees, and other agencies within the judiciary. The Chief mandated there would be increased access, and there was increased access. Finally, in one of her last access initiatives, the Chief called upon Associate Justice Barry Albin to head the Supreme Court Committee on Public Access to Court Records. As she said at the time, quote, "The committee should start with a presumption of openness of court records. The goal is to balance the judiciary's obligation to keep our processes transparent and open to the public with our obligations to safeguard legitimate privacy interests." Judge Karchman could go on, but time is limited. Suffice it to say, the Chief set the groundwork for a judiciary that became the most open and accessible in the country, and that legacy endures to this day. With all of her varied responsibilities and charges, Chief Justice Poritz always maintained her sense of collegiality, openness, poise, and stature. To this day, she remains the consummate teacher, always finding time to edit every writing submitted to her. As a former judge once noted, and Judge Karchman personally experienced, you had better have your syntax and grammar correct, because if not, the little blue pen will emerge. How do we best capture the core of Chief Justice Poritz in only a brief ceremony or a few words? An ancient biblical poem might suffice, entitled "A Woman of Valor." It describes that woman as energetic, righteous, and capable, and then defines in one short phrase the Chief's essence, quote, "She opens her mouth in wisdom, and the lesson of kindness is on her tongue," close quote. The portrait that will be unveiled today provides a lasting testament to an enduring legacy of leadership. Judge Karchman is proud to have been part of it.
Thank you, Judge Sabatino, and to the persona that you adopted. We appreciate it. At the close of the proceedings today, the family and court invite you to a reception that will take place on the atrium level, just above the ground level of our building. But beforehand, we turn for the final word to the Honorable Chief Justice Deborah T. Poritz.
This is my opportunity to say thank you and to recognize all of the people, most in this room, who worked with me over the years and who gave so much, selflessly, to this judiciary. And it is an opportunity to thank my family and friends for their love and support, for letting me be impossibly difficult during those times when stress overtook common sense. But first, I must thank the court for holding this ceremony for me. You have made it possible for me to do what I wanted to do 5 years ago, to say these thank yous and to say goodbye to my colleagues. And you honor me by hanging me with my predecessors on your conference room walls. Where to begin? Before I even went to law school, at age 37, with 2 sons, aged 10 and 12 at home, there was my husband, who pushed me out of the house to take the LSATs when at the last minute I said, "Why am I doing this?" And who believed in me and supported me, even when I disappeared into the world of the law and he found himself taking on more and more of the everyday responsibilities of our lives, so that I could thrive in this new world I had found. And my children, Jonathan, who knew how to lay on a guilt trip and told me at 10 that I was destroying his childhood. And Mark, who did not care that I was not there when he came home from school because he was busy with other things and did not always come home from school at 3 o'clock anyway. They did their homework with me around the dining room table after dinner and learned that women, too, could be chief counsels to governors and state attorneys general and even chief justices. And there were friends and colleagues. There was Bill O'Shaughnessy, who advised me about law school and does not know to this day that the most important thing he did for me was to take me seriously when other friends laughed and said, "You can't possibly think you can do this at 37. And Bill's sister, Maura Strong, who was the librarian at the AG's library and coddled and nurtured the law clerks and new lawyers alike, and who calmed us down when we panicked and felt inadequate. And Judge Skillman, to whom I owe much. He taught me how to be a lawyer, how to think and write, and how to seek to be my best as I learned my craft. Indeed, he taught a generation of us, many who became judges and partners in major law firms and who are in this room today. And then later, the people who became my colleagues and my friends on the court, in the AOC, in the vicinages, and in the clerk's office. Alan Handler, who, as you've heard, at first had chambers down the hall from mine, and who in his low, calm way gave me advice that made it possible to survive that first year and after. He taught me about the court at its best, about those extraordinary moments when 7 justices, 7 separate identities, who together are more than each of us, come together to do our work. "Debbie," he said, "what is remarkable about the members of the court is their capacity to surprise." It took me some time to understand what Justice Handler was saying. Only as the months passed and I observed my sister, Justice Garibaldi, and my brothers at work, did his words resonate. I knew that the members of the court often dealt with difficult and controversial new issues, and I learned that they took their responsibilities with humility and seriousness. And I learned that they came to conference ready to listen to one another, to test one another, and that they analyzed the law and searched for precedent, and that sometimes there were moments of clarity, and sometimes everyone came together, even the justices who had started in a different place. It was that capacity to surprise, and a decision was made. Justice Handler taught me to take pride in that process and to recognize that when the court mined deeply, it reached for justice. Each member of that court contributed his or her unique perspective to shaping the law. I cannot mention them all, or the new justices that came after them as they retired, one by one. But they are special. Justice Long was willing to speak today, and I am grateful to her for her kind words and her friendship, far more than I can express. She moved into Justice Handler's chambers, have you heard, down the hall after he retired, and we had lunch together, and we laughed together, and we worried about our children and our grandchildren together, and we argued the law over salad. We were always dieting, excuse me, Justice Long, and coffee together. She gave so much to the judiciary that we all love, and we are indebted to her. My law clerks, just having the opportunity to work with bright young people fresh out of law school was a delight. I cannot thank them properly for their hard work, for their bravery when they mustered the nerve to tell me I was wrong, and for their dedication, especially when we were trying to get an opinion out and pulling, well, almost all-nighters. They make me optimistic when I worry about the world we now inhabit. And finally, the judges and administrators I came to know in the 10 years I was here. The 3 administrative directors who served when I was chief, Jim Chancia, the first, who lives in New Mexico now, and who knew how to diffuse tension with his dry humor, and Dick Williams and Phil Karchman, to whom I owe great thanks for their willingness to talk today, Phil with a substitute, and for their dedication and deep love of the court system, and the men and women who keep it running, even in the face of budget cuts and freezes on wages and caseloads too heavy to process. Together we took the final steps, unifying the courts, reconciling disparate salary systems from county to county, and forging a statewide culture, as you have heard, so that lawyers practicing in one vicinage would know as much as possible what was expected in another vicinage. And the assignment judges, who came together once a month to build that culture, and who really ran the system while Jim and Dick and Phil and I got the credit. I cannot name you all, but many of you are also here, and you know how you changed the courts. I have left out so many people, the men and women of the appellate division who work harder than anyone I know and handle more cases in a year than anyone has a right to expect, while dispensing a quality of justice unsurpassed by any other appellate court. And many more to thank. Not enough time. Simply not enough time. Donna Anna P., my assistant, who made this ceremony a reality. But let me leave you with this story. It's a story that's reminiscent of the story that the chief told when he opened these proceedings. When I came, old men in black robes, sitting in wide gilt frames, some 8 feet tall, lined the walls of the chief's chambers. 2 stories tall, those walls. I sat alone at a small desk in that huge room, a little gray-haired lady, and I read cases and looked at court rules and began to write my first opinion. But I heard them whispering, those old men, and the din grew loud and louder. What they were saying is a woman doing here. So Steve Townsend, then the clerk of the court, protesting because the portraits were indeed wonderful paintings, moved the robed gentleman from another time into the hallways behind the courtroom. He became a close friend and advisor, Steve Townsend, but our relationship was a little rocky at the start because of those old men. And now, in the court's conference room, a woman will hang with all the men who have served as Chief Justice since the 1947 Constitution, and with Justice Brennan, too, because we claim him for our own. We in our frames watch the court as it works, reminders of the past as each succeeding court forges a new future. Thank you so much for having this ceremony.